Southwest Mountains, double-track main line, long trains running fast on an enormous scale layout. That is the artistic work of 77-year-old Ralph Johnson in Los Angeles, California. His layout had a sentimental story behind it that is defined as a labor of love, built by his closest friends, Steve Depew, Bob Ziegler, Nick Baroni, and Steve Marinkovich. Ralph Johnson is the former director of the Southwest Division of the Toy Train Operating Society. Back in the day, Ralph grew up in Berkeley, California, and loved both toy trains and real trains. Ralph likes to have his layout to take place in the Southwest, where the Southern Pacific ran. After all, he had worked for the Southern Pacific Railroad for many years, and he was proud of it. But this wasn't Johnson's first layout. Prior to this one, he had a layout in his garage a few years ago. While his layout looks great, hard times would soon befell him. Johnson's first wife had suffered from cancer and became terminally ill. Johnson had to spend time taking care of her every day instead of playing with his trains. This had led Johnson's layout to become run down, broken, neglected, and covered with dust. All of his wife's struggles for battling against cancer had culminated into her death in November of 1986. Johnson was hit hard by the death of her wife. After that, he felt depressed, lonely, and downhearted by this, and the damage had already been done to his layout, all because he was too busy with his wife's health. Luckily, his friends are always there to support him, including one of his closest friends in particular, Steve Marinkovich. They heard of the news of his wife's death and rough times that he had been going through, so together, Ralph, Steve, and the rest of the gang are going to build a new layout, and this time, it will be bigger and better than it ever was before. The layout was measured 37 by 17 feet, and it will be built inside Johnson's 20 by 40 foot garage. Like I said before, Johnson likes his layout to take place in the Southwest. That's why he had made the mountains, and they were painted with some brick dye mixed into several colors, so it can replicate the mountains seen in Southern California. There was even a lake and waterfall by the mountainside, where the trains cross over the two girder bridges on both levels. He also likes to have faster and longer trains around his two-track mainline layout, just like the kind of trains seen in real life. All of his friends contributed to the project with their special skills. Every person was an expert at something, and was often done with spontaneity, but it was also painstakingly done with time and passion. One does the precision model making, the other does the wiring, and the other does the electronics. Steve had crafted some of the scenery for the layout. Even Ralph Johnson himself shared some of his talents. Johnson wanted to get this layout done before it could be featured in the Great Toy Train Layouts of America book in 1987. So far, they were making progress on their work. Finally, they had finished the layout just in time, and it looked absolutely splendid. It now became part of the Great Toy Train Layouts of America book and video, and Johnson and his friends couldn't be any happier. Several trains ran around the wide two mainline loops of track. Some of the trains can pull as many cars as they can, others can run at fast speeds without flying off the track and brake. They were powered by two ZW transformers, plus a control system that operates the switches and lights. The yard is operated independently from the rest of the layout, with its own ZW and a control panel, where engines can be switching some cars to assemble a long consist, and then a locomotive can come into the yard and take that consist out on the main line. The yard is actually both a freight and passenger yard. As you can see from this shot, this was a shot seen earlier from the previous layout of Michael Premack, where the narrator describes about the mainline track switches. There is also a fifth spare ZW, just in case if the ZWs were broken. The layout in general looked wonderful, and it had captured that southwestern set very well. Now, say what you want about the MPC era being considered as the supposed dark age of Lionel, but I would have to strongly disagree with that ridiculous stance because it's not true. They're not the dark age. Why? Because the MPC trains were actually good, and they had their charm to it. The Norfolk and Western J look nice, and so does the Southern Pacific Daylight. I like the Texas Special and Rio Grande F3 streamlined passenger sets. And so do the Hudson's triple or double heading a freight train. Check out those SP Jeep diesels pulling along freight train. It also helped that both of these engines had magnet traction. You see guys, they were better than the late 60s period of Lionel. Now that was the real dark age. Here's an opinion from Ralph Johnson in regards to steam and diesel engines. He prefers steam over diesel, and here's why.
I like steam type trains more than I do diesels. I just like them. Because there's more action in steam than there is with diesels. When the train's moving, you got these drive wheels going, you know, but on a diesel you don't see anything, just driving along.
It's a based opinion, I tell ya.
Well, I've been liking trains since I was a little kid, but I couldn't get them because my father never bought any.
It's because even though back then, kids grew up in the old days, electric toy trains can still be relatively expensive even to this day. And so it goes. Ralph Johnson is now happy to be where he is at again, playing trains together with his friends, and he was remarried to his second wife, Eleanor. The dark days of 1986 were finally over. Johnson and his team had done a superb job on this layout. They had worked hard on this layout for hours on end without stopping. A lot of detail and effort was put into all of this thanks to a bunch of his close friends. This layout is solely made to cheer up Ralph Johnson and give him a lot of support, and that made him feel much better after this layout had been done. Everybody should feel proud of themselves for what they had achieved. Why his layout had never appeared in the I Love Toy Train series, I don't know. All the passion and heart were poured into this project, and the end result is truly brilliant. This project is what is defined as a labor of love. What Steve said is that if the team can pull themselves together, they'll be able to fight against an adversary to achieve their goal, and that's exactly what they did. It was always sweet for them to help Ralph out, but the most important thing about this group is that they worked together like a team and put lots of love and work into this layout. That's why it was defined as a labor of love, and it was indeed a masterpiece. Few of my tears have been dripping from my eyes after listening to that story, but I'm not finished yet. Here's some trivia. In the 2004 DVD release of Great Toy Train Layouts of America, they played some music over both the Michael Premack and Ralph Johnson layouts from Volume 1, whereas in the original, they didn't. Why did TM have to add some music over both of the layouts in the first volume? I don't know. I think it was unnecessary. I think both clips are better off without the music, like how most Toy Train layout segments were. It helps us viewers get to listen to the trains and accessories operate like it was ASMR. The font for the segments were fine, maybe other than Steve Marenkovich's name in Ralph Johnson's layout, but other than that, there's no point of adding music to both of these segments. Most toy train clips should all have the sounds of the trains and accessories operate without anything else in the background. That's all. Next, we'll move on to a classic standard gauge layout that is the home of Chuck Brasher.